We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. A playground for some. For others, it's where they make their living. But the sea's unpredictable.
Things can go wrong in seconds.
When you're out in the boat, every minute counts.
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of over 5,000 ordinary people, ready to leave their jobs, their families, and race to our rescue.
When the pager goes off, your body's full of adrenaline.
Okay guys, go, go, go.
There's potentially a family out there with somebody missing.
Okay.
If it hadn't been for them, I wouldn't be here today.
We'll get you out of here.
They definitely saved my life.
Yep.
Equipped with their own cameras, the crews give us a unique insight into every call-out.
Hey, grab a hand.
As only they see it.
You're doing really, really well, buddy. Guys, we need to get him in. Get him in, get him in.
For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
Come on!
To know that you've helped save a life.
Let's get you in!
It's such an awesome feeling.
Hold on!
In the southwestern corner of Ireland, close to its most southerly point, is the harbour town of Castletownbere.
We live in a peninsula, the Beara Peninsula. There's 5 or 6 different villages throughout the peninsula. There's approximately 800 living in Castletownbere. The scenery here is beautiful.
Castletownbere is a big fishing town, and I suppose the majority of the industry here is fishing related.
Between all the factories and the boats would probably employ about 70% of the people of Beara. Huge employment.
It's a huge fishing community, and I suppose part of the RNLI is central to that in the town.
A lifeboat station was established here in 1997, following a long campaign by the local community.
There is an awful lot of boats out there. There's a lot of men out there trying to earn a living, and I think a lifeboat on standby for them is an essential piece of kit, yeah. Down through the years, yeah, there's been a lot of tragedies here involving fishing vessels that have unfortunately been lost. It can be a very unforgiving place, and mixed in with a very unforgiving shoreline, it's a recipe for disaster if it goes wrong.
Early November, a dark, wet night settles in after a grey and wintry day.
I was sitting at home, you know, contemplating going to bed about maybe 20 to 11 that way, and suddenly the pager went off.
A call has come in from a local fishing vessel 12 miles out at sea. One of its crew has fallen ill with a suspected stroke.
With a stroke, time is huge. We needed to get that man to hospital as quick as we could to get him the treatment he needed.
With anyone suffering a stroke, it's vitally important to get the casualty to hospital as soon as possible to minimize the risk of any long-term damage. Every second counts.
You're heading to these kind of call-outs, you're thinking, is he holding his own? Is he going downhill fast? You know, until you're standing in front of him, you kind of don't really know what you're dealing with. And it was a local boat. I suppose you just get into that little kind of a community mindset where this is one of our own, you know, so we need to get here and let's get this done as quick as we can.
Right, Dean, Marnie. Basically, that night we picked the first 7. They were through the door.
Those 7 include newest crew member Donna, who has never been on a shout before, let alone one at night.
Being told to kiss up that I was going out, that gave me big nerves, all right, at first going out, because a lot of pressure was put on you all of a sudden.
You know, no call-out is easy, but I suppose nighttime call-outs are that little bit more difficult because you're in the dark.
10 minutes after the call came in, the station's 7-class all-weather lifeboat launches and heads out into the pitch black of the Atlantic.
But definitely more on the nervous side, as we were going out to sea, didn't want to let anyone down.
There is a different atmosphere in the water at night. It's dark. You're depending on radar, you're depending on plotters, you're depending on paper charts.
In the daytime, you see everything. When you go out at night, it's different. and you know, throw 2 or 3 metres of a swell into the mix then as well.
Along with the lifeboat, 85 miles northeast in Shannon, the Coast Guard helicopter has also been scrambled, ready to airlift the casualty directly to hospital.
The alternative would be to bring him ashore and bring him by ambulance, which would take approximately an hour and a half or 2 hours. Whereas with the helicopter, he would have been on the grounds of Cork University Hospital within half an hour.
With the helicopter inbound, the lifeboat meets the fishing boat on its way back to land and matches its speed. The plan is to get a crew member on board to properly assess the casualty.
When we arrived, we noticed that sea swell wasn't going to be favourable for us to get alongside. It was too dangerous.
You have a lifeboat of 43 or 4 tons versus a trawler of 250, 300 tons. And you know, if they come together, it's not going to be good.
So we made a decision to escort the fishing vessel into safer and calmer water just inside the harbour's mouth, where we would put a crew member of the lifeboat onto the vessel to assess the casualty and see what best was to do.
Having battled back through the rolling waves, the 7 class enters the harbour and prepares to transfer a crew member to the trawler.
I'll go across Dean and I'll see what the best way of getting him off is, okay?
Dave is casualty care trained, so I asked Dave would he go aboard.
Go to the ladder, yeah?
When you're transferring between boats, you go when you're happy to go, and you do it when you're comfortable to do it, and when you're ready to go. You need to make sure you land on the boat, and when you land there, that you stay there, that you don't end up going down between the 2 boats.
Within the calmer waters of the harbour, Dave takes up a position on the bow of the lifeboat as Dean edges them close enough for Dave to step across.
On board a casualty vessel, I met the skipper of the vessel, so he brought me down to where the casualty was, and they were very concerned for him.
How are ya? Okay?
Yeah.
Are you able to walk?
You know, there was 3 or 4 guys around him. He was sitting upright and he was alert.
He cannot walk properly. That side? Okay.
He indicated that he has no movement in his right arm and little to no movement in his right leg.
So you just sit there, okay, and you sit tight, all right?
Going on board to a casualty who's after having a stroke, you know, I suppose I was very, very limited to what I could do for him, and I was very conscious of that as well.
Yeah.
With the helicopter almost on scene, the crew have to quickly figure out the best and safest way to extract the casualty once it arrives.
His right-hand side, his leg and his arm, his speech and everything is very poor. I'd say this is probably the best point, maybe. If you could come in here.
Because of the shape of this fishing vessel with the gantry and cranes and winches and different things, it would have been very difficult for the winchman to land on the deck.
If you could come in
As
here,
the deck of the fishing vessel is too crowded and dangerous to land the winchman on, the crew decide to transfer the casualty across to the lifeboat and extract him from there.
If you could just come in here with the nose, Dean, we'll lift him up, all right? So just give me a couple of minutes and I'll bring him down.
I was able to go back to the casualty and say, look, lads, right, this is what's happening, so look, we'll go with this and we'll get him off.
Dave explains the plan to the crew of the trawler, whose help he will need to safely move the casualty.
All right?
Yeah.
Just bring him to here a sec, right? Just this piece here, okay?
His mobility was seriously hindered. He couldn't walk. He had to be lifted up onto the stern of the fishing boat by his crew members.
I suppose we were lucky in that he wasn't the biggest guy in the world.
Can we lift? Can you turn him and sit him? Sit his backside up there and hold on to him, all right?
Again, it's very time critical. We've 2 vessels coming alongside at sea, so we want to get him out of there quick. I just reached down and grabbed the casualty kind of just under the arms.
Ready? All right.
And just pulled him across onto the bow of the lifeboat. It was nothing overly graceful, but it just needed to be effective.
All right, just get under his arm there, Seamus. Yeah.
Once he was on the lifeboat, we were able to assess him more. So we all helped him into the wheelhouse and we sat him down.
How are you feeling? Okay, can you breathe? Can you breathe okay?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can breathe okay. Any pains, chest pains? No chest pains.
Certainly does appear to be a stroke. You know, he was very, very compromised down one side of his body. He could talk, but it was slurred. You know.
Okay, your leg? Dead.
Yeah.
Okay, your arm and your leg are dead.
As a crew, we were quite concerned for his well-being. Obviously, we needed to get a paramedic to see him and get him out to hospital as soon as we possibly could.
We need to get him ready for a helicopter lift.
With the helicopter lights now visible on the horizon, the lifeboat heads back out to sea, and Donna is briefed for his first ever winch before the noise of the rotors overhead makes it impossible to hear.
Always stay behind Seamus, all right? Okay, I'll be the only one ahead of Seamus. There'll be a rope coming in attached to the helicopter. The last thing you want is to be tangled in that any way, shape or form, okay?
Yeah, the biggest thing there, I suppose, everything's just happening very fast. So you have to concentrate because it's full on.
But there's so much rope and you have a helicopter on the boat, so we have to be on point, 100% ready, okay?
Obviously, we've a protocol in our heads that we go through. You know, we're doing A, B, C, and D. We get the paramedic on deck.
All right, lads, position, so game time.
The lifeboat gets up to speed and into position, while overhead the helicopter moves closer, ready to lower the winchman.
You'll be able to hear an absolute thing now when he comes in over us. Nothing like. So it's fierce important that everybody knows exactly what they're doing and is exactly where they're supposed to be. All right?
How it works is the helicopter drops a high line. As that comes down, the winchman starts coming, and one crew member of the lifeboat is keeping the tension on the high line and pulling the winchman down into the deck of the lifeboat.
I put the rope into the basket and just coiled it up so no one would trip over us, and especially at night time, no one could see fully what's happening. The noise was severe, it was insane, you couldn't hear. I was shocked, alright, how physical it was. You could feel everything hit you, alright, with the waves of the water and the splashes off the propeller of the helicopter.
As well as the darkness, the swell that made it too dangerous to transfer over to the fishing vessel at sea is now also making things equally difficult for the winchman.
For 1 second, the water could be 6 meters under him, then it could be 20 meters under him. So he has to kind of anticipate when he's going to land, and you could definitely easily break your leg if you don't time it right.
It's a wild situation while that's happening, while the paramedic is coming down. You hold the high line just to stop him from spinning.
As well as the extreme noise and spray, the downdraft from the rotor blades also creates another hazard, a huge amount of static electricity.
You can't touch the winchman till he lands on the boat, as he could also get an electric shock from the helicopter. So it was important just to let the winchman just land by himself, then just hold him afterwards, and once he hits the deck.
Once the paramedic landed on board, told him pretty much everything we knew.
He's alert, very alert, but he's complaining, he's very weak all down his right side. Okay. So they're saying stroke, is what they're thinking.
The winchman, a trained paramedic, quickly assesses the casualty to decide the next course of action.
The winchman made the call that it was safe to bring the casualty up onto the helicopter.
With the helicopter being the fastest way to get the casualty to hospital, the crew prepare to winch him off the deck of the lifeboat.
The casualty looked very pale in himself, and he was in a situation that he really, really wanted to get out of as quickly as possible.
The helicopter finally came around and he was able to hook on the winchman himself and the casualty, and I was feeding out the rope to Dave as the helicopter pulled the two back up.
Once he left the deck of the lifeboat, we knew that, well, you know, this guy's going to be in the hospital in probably 20 minutes.
The casualty is flown to Cork University Hospital, where, thanks to the swift actions of everyone involved, his condition is stabilised.
Big relief, big relief. He was going to get the care he needed as soon as possible.
Not your average Tuesday night, no. Not your average first shout either, in fairness for Donagh. But in fairness to them, yeah, took it all in the stride.
Everything went fairly smoothly, so that made my first show a lot more comfortable, and I got a big pass in the back of our eyes once that was over.
It was a very intense first shout. Obviously, being night time, being dark, the weather poor, so there was a lot of pressure on Donagh as a crew member as well to help the rest of the crew.
It was different to any training sessions. I never experienced a helicopter landing on our lifeboat, so that was every big moment. Definitely, I felt good in myself just to get one under the belt. That gave me a lot more confidence in my next call-outs.
Some guys are in the station with a few years and are still waiting to do maybe a helicopter training exercise, and you know, Donagh gets one on his first shout and locating, assisting casualties and casualty transfers, and he got everything wrapped into one call out, yeah.
For every RNLI crew member, the first shout is just the beginning of many firsts.
There's lots of different milestones throughout your lifeboat career.
There you go, mate.
First time out on a boat, first time dealing with a casualty.
Back to the chest.
2, 3. First show is always nerve-wracking. You want to be an asset, right? You want to try your best. You want to make sure you're helping and not hindering.
Every time you go afloat, it's going to be something different and something you might not have experienced the first time.
On the boat, you're always learning every time you go out. The conditions are always different, the jobs are always different.
You going? Dog? He's off!
Most of us are not sea people, so there's a first time getting out into really nasty weather, all the navigation, sea conditions. Until you get out there on the water, you don't know how you're going to be the first time.
Yeah, hold on, hold on.
But it's never the same old shout, it's never the same old thing. There's always something different that's going to happen, and you never know what's around the corner.
Lying on the Somerset coast, facing out onto the Bristol Channel, is the town of Burnham-on-Sea.
It's a holiday town in many respects. Probably a lot of day visitors really come to Burnham.
You've got quite a lot of coves. There's a few beaches, and the sea, they say the sea, but we're kind of still bottom of the Bristol Channel. So the water's not blue and sparkly, it's brown and sandy.
Bristol Channel is a very unforgiving place, just due to the tidal conditions we have.
I think it's the second quickest tidal range in the world, and if you're not aware of it, it can catch you out.
Yeah, it is quite a dangerous bit of water, really.
Watching over the dangerous waters of Burnham are two lighthouses, as well as the lifeboat station, established way back in 1836.
The lighthouses, yeah, both of them are pretty iconic, really. The big one is inshore, and the small one, it's a really unique building sitting on 9 legs. It sits right in the middle of the beach. It's a strange building, but it's really nice looking. It is Burnham's landmark, I suppose, really.
We get a wide mixture of shouts. You know, we get boats aground, boats on fire, boats sinking, persons missing, people caught off by the tide.
We have an Atlantic 85 B-class lifeboat, and then your D-class lifeboat, which does more close in work rather than out in the channel.
Paul is the newest active crew member at Burnham.
How often do these get checked?
They get checked every time we go out and come back.
Right. We started off as shore crew, which involved launching the boats. I then had the opportunity to go on the boats.
So we've got a set of check cards we work to as well.
Oh, okay.
There should be a pack in here, and there's usually one in every life jacket as well.
Gives you an idea of whether you think you want to be on the boats and whether you can cope with being out on the water.
Yeah, it's a big learning curve. A lot of our volunteers now are not from the sea background. Most of them have never been on a boat before.
When you've actually got the crew members showing you, telling you, guiding you, you really get a sense of the fact that they know what they're on about.
Mid-August, 7:30 in the morning, the start of a bright, clear summer's day.
I was cleaning my teeth and my pager went off. I literally just grabbed the car keys and headed down the station.
An urgent call has come into the Coast Guard from a boat taking on water out in the Bristol Channel.
There was a feeling of urgency, depending on what type of vessel it is. You know, they could go down fairly quick in seconds. Then you know, it's a different ballgame.
As the crew arrive, the alert is escalated to a mayday, the highest level of emergency. They prepare to launch the larger Atlantic 85, with the first 4 crew members to respond to the page, one of whom is Paul.
This was my first proper shout. I was kitted up, life vest, dry suit.
I was the 4th person to arrive and was directed to get my gear on and get on the boat.
All good?
Yeah, all good.
We knew there was a vessel sinking, 2 people on board, so we knew it's fairly urgent to get the team together, get the boats launched and get going.
With the mayday adding extra urgency, the lifeboat launches just 9 minutes after the call came in and heads towards the sinking vessel's last reported location, 3 miles west of the station.
We knew roughly where the vessel was, but obviously the vessel was still drifting at the time.
We were in a rush to get there because we weren't entirely sure at that stage what we were going to, I suppose. Whether we were going to get the salvage pump on and be able to pump it out, or whether we were just bringing people back.
I've never experienced a boat taken on water. It was never something that I thought I would ever see. I was really nervous for the fact that there's 2 people on board, and my concerns were, am I going to be able to be the person that's there to support them and just kind of do what we needed to do to get them out of a potentially dangerous situation. There was a lot of urgency to be there as quick as we could. We knew, listening over the radio, that the Coast Guard helicopter was up and that Barry Dock lifeboat was on its way.
Yeah, you sort of run things through your mind. Is it going to sink quick? Is it going to float? Is it, you know, a lost cause? You know, you just sort of not too sure till you get there.
It takes the Burnham lifeboat almost 20 minutes to reach location, where other assets have also arrived in answer to the mayday.
We sort of saw in the distance a helicopter circling above. We saw another vessel on the left-hand side. We saw the boat fairly low in the water at the time, with smoke coming out the engine rooms.
Although the crew had been informed that the sinking boat was a fishing vessel, as they draw closer, they realise it is something else entirely.
It looked like I would say, somebody's home, that somebody would live on it, and you could see that it was then starting to go down at the bow.
The lifeboat pulls alongside to find out the scale of the problem from the people on board.
On arrival, the 2 guys that were on it were in a bit of shock. They were sitting in the front.
They told us that it's been taken on water. They told us their bilge pumps were not keeping up.
There was a couple of holes down the side of the hull, but they were above the waterline. So where the water initially was taken on board, I don't know.
2 crew members jump aboard, one to make sure the casualties are not in need of urgent medical help, the other to try and locate the source of the leak.
When I got on the boat, I had a look inside the wheelhouse and in the engine compartment. There was a lot of water in there at that stage. On the Atlantic, we carry a salvage pump. We set it up on the boat, and that, once primed, that should pump out a decent rate.
They're alongside, the other side's got. They're there now.
While the crew attempt to stop the rising water, Barry Dock lifeboat also arrives on scene in response to the earlier mayday.
Our intentions are to get the casualties all through off in the
At that stage, it was time to get the 2 crew off of the boat onto the Barry Dock boat.
Obviously a bigger boat. They had a lot more room than us. Warmer facilities. They was getting a little bit cold.
They got them both on board, I think, Scott.
With the casualties now safely off the sinking vessel, the crew do their best to try and save their boat.
We ran our pump for about 5 or 10 minutes and tried to gauge whether the levels were dropping.
Within a couple of minutes, yeah, it was ankle deep in the front of the boat, so we knew at that stage it was pretty much a lost cause.
The decision was made then to come off the boat because it was taking on too much water for the pump to cope with.
As the water level continues to rise, the crew abandon ship.
Our ethos is to save lives. If we can save the vessel, we try what we can, within the safety of the boat and the crew, but it's not always the case. The casualties, obviously sad to see their vessel go, and the reality sort of set in then how close they were, possibly going down with the boat or swimming ashore.
I loved living on my boat. I really did. It's nice and it's cozy. I really like not being able to have too much stuff. So yeah, living on a boat was actually suited me really well.
Damien, the boat's owner, had set off from Watchet Harbour at first light with his friend Doug.
The hull of the boat had fallen into a bit of disrepair, and the marina at Watchet didn't have the facilities to be able to lift her out for that to take place. So the closest place where I could do that was going to be Portishead Marina.
I think we're looking at about 16 miles up to Portishead, so it's not just a trip around the corner. He's aware of the fact that we got, not the greatest hull in the world, so we're looking for like a flat calm to go on.
So this 48-hour window of decent, calm weather was coming up, and I was chatting with Doug, and he said, "I'm free when you are. We can go when you're ready." Doug's definitely the experienced one of the pair when it comes to boating. I haven't had much experience of being on the sea, and I get quite seasick, so I'm not the best.
I did joke with friends and colleagues before I set off. What are you doing, Doug, this week? Well, I said, I'm going to take a boat up the Bristol Channel and watch it sink. Never now. Yeah.
So we managed to set off, I think, around 10 to 6 in the morning. The sea condition was pretty calm. The boat was not moving around very much, and that was exactly what I wanted.
We're moving at about 8 knots, and I thought I'll just have a little look in the engine room, just to make sure we're staying afloat.
He said, "Damo, I think we're taking on a bit of water here. It looks like it's getting a little bit higher."
And I said to Damo, I think we need to knock it on the head, mate. We need to turn around and go back.
At this point, the sea state had picked up, and the boat was rising up and down much more in the water than it had been, which was causing us to take on more water.
There was smoke pouring out the stern. I'm thinking, Damo, just bloody step on it. Let's go for it. We just got to do what we can now. And then the smoke became unbearable and the engine had expired. And I'm thinking, yeah, we're in trouble now. We could be in a bit of trouble here. You always hear the horror stories, about boats, going down by the stern. They usually slip between the waves pretty quick. And I've looked in the bedroom, and like Damo, we got a lot of water in the bedroom here. There's only 3 rungs left on the ladder. So we're starting to really go down by the stern now. And then one of the, excuse me.
At this point, Doug's experience kicked in against my naivety and my optimism. And Doug suggested that we put out a call to the Coast Guard.
You're on a mayday, which means that any shipping in the area is now going to be making its way towards you. So, I mean, it's out of my control now. It's a mayday situation. And then I saw one of the most beautiful sights I've ever seen in my life. It's called a helicopter. When I saw that helicopter, mate, that was big. That was big. I'm thinking, yes, now we're definitely gonna be all right. Yeah, brilliant.
We are floundering. The engine's now expired. We're waiting on the lifeboat, hoping we're gonna get a tow in.
The Burnham lifeboat arrived shortly afterwards, in time to rescue Damien and Doug, but too late to save their boat.
I remember how surreal everything has suddenly become, watching my boat just getting lower and lower in the water.
It's taking it on quick now, isn't it? There's some big holes inside. We just got to wait around and see it go down, mate.
So we stayed in the area for a little while. We picked up some of the debris. A Homer Simpson slipper floated past, which was a bit of a shock when you see it first of all floating in the water. Big googly eyes looking at you. And it sort of brings it home to you then, really. That was somebody's home.
These things are they're just things. And we weren't injured, and nobody else was, which was great. I would hate it if someone trying to rescue us got injured or worse in the process.
Damien could only watch on, waiting for his boat to sink beneath the waves.
Obviously, for the amount of water it was taken on board and how it sat in the water, you kind of would have expected it to disappear, and it was literally just bobbing around and it just wouldn't go. It was a very stubborn vessel.
It got to a certain stage when it was more submarine than it was boat, and it still didn't go down. So we decided to get the casualty guys and take them back to Burnham whilst Barry Dock sat there and waited for it to sink.
Damo did say to me, he said, "Doug, thank God you were here." He said, "I don't know what I would have done without you being on this boat." I said, "Well, mate," I said, "we could have been looking at a different scenario. Yeah, it could have all ended a little bit differently for him."
Steady, sure. Okay.
Damien's boat never did sink. It continued to drift until it eventually washed ashore and broke up on the rocks.
This was Paul's first shout as a new crew member, so it's probably one of the good shouts to go on for your first one. Story to tell.
Yeah, a lot of them say it was a good first shout for me, but again, I'm thankful that everyone was safe and that we were able to bring them people back to land.
I remember having this very, very emotional and humbling feeling that all of these people had come out just to look after us. Yeah, I felt very safe, very, very safe and grateful.
Just over 100 miles southwest of Burnham, on the northern edge of Cornwall, is the coastal town and surfing mecca of Newquay.
Newquay is definitely the surf capital of Cornwall. Everyone loves it here.
So many beaches. There's great swimming, there's great surfing, there's everything you could want to do on the water, really.
I think Newquay's pretty special. Obviously, it's a historic fishing town, really. There's still a dozen fishing boats out of there working commercially.
That's the best part of Cornwall. Best part of Britain, is it?
With so much history in sea-based activity, there's been a lifeboat station serving Newquay for almost 140 years.
The first lifeboat in Newquay was the Joshua back in 1860 when they built the lifeboat station and the lifeboat slip on the headland.
They used to wheel that out on a big trailer by hand and get it right on the brink of the slipway while all the crew were sat in it, and it would be just basically held on a big rope facing down towards the sea. And then once the crew were good to go, there'd be a designated bloke there to sort of knock the shackle pin out, and away they go down the slipway.
God, imagine being dressed up in the old oilskins, holding onto your 15, 16-foot paddle and shooting down there into the unknown in the dark and having to row out into the horrible seas.
When you look back now, you think we've got it very easy now in our shiny rubber dinghies. We recently received a Atlantic 85 at Newquay, beginning of the year.
Uncle Johnny's the new boat. Everything's fresh, everything's new.
Yeah, it's nice to have a new boat. Everything works. Nothing's broken yet.
Early August, late afternoon. A breezy summer day that's beginning to worsen.
We've got a weather warning. Strong winds already. We've had gusts of 55 miles an hour.
The day of the shout, I was actually up at the headland and I could see how bad the weather was then, and thinking to myself, you know, there ain't going to be anyone at sea today.
But despite the rough conditions, somebody is in trouble out at sea. The pagers sound with an immediate readiness alert.
The immediate readiness is basically get everyone down to the station and stand by for further instructions. Because the swell was so big and it was a big tide, the initial thoughts were it's going to be sort of a hairy one, because what are people doing out in these sort of conditions?
A lone surfer has been spotted struggling to get ashore at St Agnes Beach, 9 miles down the coast from Newquay, right next to another lifeboat station.
When they said he was down St Agnes, you sort of have a raise your eyebrows a little bit and think, hell, I've just seen what the sea's doing out there. St Agnes lifeboat were paged first, but because of the conditions, they couldn't physically launch their boat. They couldn't get it off the slipway. So that's when it came down to paging Newquay.
The initial thought of us having to transit around there in those conditions were a bit unnerving.
I was like, this is going to be interesting getting down there. This is going to be, yeah, quite a juicy one.
I basically just had a word with them and said, are you happy to go? You've obviously seen the conditions out there.
Attention, lifeboat launching.
Everyone felt fine, everyone was happy. So that's when we decided to go.
Within 5 minutes of the pagers sounding, the crew are on the water with their brand new Atlantic 85, heading into severe conditions for the very first time.
As you come out of the harbour mouth, the boat is sort of head to sea, so you go vertical a couple of times. And then you've got the waves coming on your starboard side, like broadside on.
Constant spray. That's all I can remember from it. Constant water in the face.
With your visor down, it's like driving your car in the rain with no windscreen wipers. Your visibility is sort of halved.
The crew take the most direct route along the coast, keeping a sharp lookout for any potential hazards.
A lot of fishing buoys, a lot of pots, especially the route we took.
In that sort of conditions, we're sort of hoping more than anything that we're not going to run into them and get rope in the prop and be, you know, struggling ourselves.
There is some rock. You're going in the boat, there is some rock on the left-hand side.
With conditions like that, you want to get there as fast as possible, but you don't want to break the crew in the boat.
It was pretty bad. We couldn't go flat out because we'd probably end up upside down.
Progress was slow, yeah. I mean, the boat's good for, what, 35 knots? I think we were doing about 12. Felt like it was taking forever to get down there.
With the weather against them the whole way, it takes the crew 45 minutes to complete a journey that would usually only take them 15. The surfer has now been in the water for over 2 hours.
So there's a boy here on the stick there, below a little house.
As we came into the bay, we spotted the Coast Guard straight away at the top of the cliff. and they were pointing down to us sort of where he was.
Coming out that way, Panzer. Keep going for that headland a little bit.
So we edged our way in there, and then in between sort of the waves, we could see him then sat on his board.
The lifeboat moves closer to the surfer.
You got a set coming in behind.
Keenly aware that the same tight sets of waves causing him so much trouble are now a danger to them too.
So we sort of go in, keep looking behind for sets, and there was a lull. We seem to go in just in between sets perfectly and grab him.
The surfer is safely on board, but worried about the length of time he's been in the water, the crew begin their medical checks.
I mean, we'd asked him if he'd swallowed any water, if he was cold. He seemed a bit tired, a bit cold, but yeah, he seemed pretty happy that we were there, really.
Although St Agnes Beach is the nearest place to land, the towering waves crashing into the shore make it far too risky.
He was very grateful for us picking him up. I don't think he was so grateful of the ride that he had back to the station. It was a bit of a white knuckle ride back.
That was probably more scarier than being in the water, I think, yeah. All I was thinking was we was going to capsize any moment, yeah.
Cornwall born and bred, Ben had paddled out into St Agnes Bay earlier that afternoon, hoping to make the most of the heavy surf.
The first hour and a half, it was pretty normal. 6 foot sort of waves, just catching those little waves. After about an hour of sort of just surfing and getting stuck in, I sort of realised that everybody else had gotten out. So I paddled to get back in. And all of a sudden, the waves have changed to about 8 to 9 foot, I'd say. And that's when things start getting a bit scary. The waves that were rolling in was smashing me down on the floor and tumbling me and pushing me into the rocks. And then dragging me back out where another wave would then do the same thing. So after about 5 to 10 minutes of sort of battling the waves and getting swept back out, that's when I started to panic a little bit, yeah. The main thing that was worrying me wasn't the waves coming in at me, but it was getting pushed onto the rocks, getting knocked out and unconscious, and then not being able to deal with the situation. By this point, there was a good 50 people watching me, because I think they must have realised I was in danger, and the lifeguards sort of shouted at me to get back out and get past the breaking waves and stay where it was safe.
Fighting his instinct to get back to shore, Ben swam out to sea instead, until he was finally clear of the surf.
I sort of sat on my surfboard about 300 metres out from the shore and just waited. It was windy, starting to rain a bit as well. I wasn't sure if anybody was coming to rescue me. Starting to get darker as well, so that was dawning on me that I didn't want to be out at night time as well. So after being in the water for about 3 hours, it's finally when I could see the Coast Guard starting to wave at me and point at something else. So I started looking around to what he might have been signalling, and that's when I sort of saw the tip of a lifeboat, and sort of a bit of a sigh of relief came over me, and I started swimming towards it.
The crew took Ben back to Newquay, warmed him up, then organised a lift back to St Agnes by land, as they washed down and refuelled the boat ready for service.
So that's the first time that boat's been out in that weather. It got us down there, got us back, got the casualty, and can't complain.
I think they definitely saved my life, yeah. I don't know what would have happened if they weren't there. I think it would have been a different story if they hadn't picked me up, yeah.
In Northern Ireland, on the banks of Upper Lough Erne, is the small waterside community of Carrybridge.
Well, Lough Erne's 2 lakes. The main town, Enniskillen, is at the joint of the 2 lakes. There's loads of islands in Lough Erne. Some people tell you there's 365, one for every day of the year, but I think that's just an urban myth. Some people have holiday homes on the islands. Some people live on the islands. and some of the islands even there are hotels on them.
Total of Lough Erne would be 52 miles long. The lake has a lot of different activities. Pike fishing would be a big thing in Upper Lough Erne. Pike range from small pike, maybe £1, £2 weight, up to 30, 32 pound weight, which is a massive fish over 100 centimetres. Yeah, so a lot of visitors would come for the pike fishing.
Keeping this busy stretch of inland water safe, as it has done since 2002, is the local lifeboat station.
The biggest dangers in our patch depends on weather conditions. If it's been windy, you will have rough water, obviously, and you can have a boat in distress with that. If we've had no rain and had lovely sunshine, the water level will drop. So then you're up against maybe people running aground or getting stuck.
Lake conditions can catch you out very quickly if you don't have your wits about you.
End of October, a cold and windy Tuesday afternoon.
I was working from home that particular day and received a wee phone call from a local friend of mine who obviously rents out wee fishing boats.
A boat with 3 fishermen on board has broken down and drifted onto an unidentified island somewhere on the loch.
I took as much information as I could, and he requested if I could pass it on to the Coast Guard, which I did, and we were tasked thereafter.
Our first concern would be the well-being of the 3 fishermen. At that stage, we didn't know if anybody was injured, anybody was hurt, anybody was wet, anybody was cold. So our initial thought was to get down as quick as possible and assess the situation on site.
That particular day, the weather wasn't great, it was a cold day. Also, we didn't know the exact location, so I knew I would need to search to find them in the first instance.
The crew launch quickly and start heading to the missing boat's last reported location, around 3 miles from the station.
The information we had on that day was that they were somewhere in the location of Knockninny, and the wind had blown them on one of the islands.
Based on the direction of the wind, I narrowed it down to 2 islands, Tonogee and the Dale Island.
So we headed down, and when we got out to the lake was a little bit rougher, a little bit choppier, a little more wind blowing.
It takes the crew 10 minutes to reach the first of the uninhabited islands where they believe the missing vessel might have washed up.
As soon as we come round the corner of the island, we visibly seen the vessel up on the shore.
Belfast Coast Guard, this is Kerry Bridge Lifeboat. Just to inform you that's us currently just arriving on scene and carrying out an assessment. The vessel is currently reached on the shoreline with 3 persons visible on the shoreline as well. We're just going to decide how we're going to approach the vessel.
They were on quite a rocky shore, and with the wind blowing and the waves breaking, we could have done damage to the hull of our boat.
There's no way we're going in this way to them.
We instead communicated with them that we were going to look for somewhere to land and come and meet them.
Hello, everybody okay? Okay, yes? It was very hard. The wind was probably howling through their helmets and that there. You could just hear mumbles coming from them.
As well as battling the wind, another obstacle to communication is that it turns out that the fishermen are all French.
What's your French like?
Bonjour.
I speak very little French. Oui, très bien, merci, that's about it. I didn't pay enough attention in school.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Christa. That's about it. Are you safe and well? Are you okay?
There was one of the gentlemen did speak some English, and we were fit to communicate to him.
No, just you stay there, okay? We're gonna go around the back side of the island and come to you, walking. Okay, you stay.
As landing next to the fishing boat is too risky, the crew head round to the far side of the island, looking for a safer place to go ashore.
As long as we get a shelter bit, that would be maybe the best because there's reeds there. Just we'll take a spin around the island. With the islands, can't actually just hop out of a boat and walk onto the island. There's a lot of trees down at the edge of the lake itself. You have to be very careful when you're going in. Yeah, just head straight for in there for now. You need to trim a bit, all right, like enough to...
We were able to dip as we went in till we got in close enough.
Getting shallower. Yeah. Just, yeah, that'll do it.
Myself and Chris got out of the boat into the water.
Good and solid. We proceeded to try and gain access to the island, which wasn't easy. You can either walk through it, Allard, or if you want to walk around here, it'd be handier maybe. Well, get in here, Justin. So we literally had to try and force our way then in through a pile of trees to gain access to the inside of the island itself. Got your ankles.
Although Chris and Allard have trained extensively to save people from the water, they have never trained specifically for this.
Never easy.
As we were hiking through the island, joking, I thought we were supposed to do water rescues and not land rescues.
Something different this, isn't it? Going through an island like that there, you do need to have your fitness about you because it's pretty hard work. Hello. Once we got halfway over the island, you could see then the 3 casualties standing down on the edge of the shoreline, waiting for us. Hello. How are you? Not so bad.
You're French, so don't speak English very well?
Dead on, that's grand.
Our first thought was the casualties. If these guys are getting wet and getting cold, let's get them off the island as soon as possible.
Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
Everybody's warm enough? Nobody was in the water, nobody is wet?
Yes, a little bit this one, but no problem.
He's not cold or anything, no? No, that's grand.
The 3 fishermen weren't overly wet, they weren't overly cold. They had some quite good gear on them to keep them warm and dry.
Has the boat just broken down?
We have no engine. Okay.
The engine's broke. Right.
The fuel don't arrive because of the plug.
Right.
The plug is dead.
We'll have a wee quick look at your boat, first of all.
We done a quick walk round of the boat, checked that the fuel was connected up to it and reconnected the fuel up to it, and we give it a pump.
I squeeze that, Allard, look. Oh yeah, so the petrol's pouring out of the...
There was nothing we could do at that time to get the boat off the shore, so we decided to leave the boat and take the 3 casualties off.
Our main point, first of all, is to get you back to Knocknenny.
Okay.
We'll not do anything about the boat at this stage.
Okay.
The main thing is to get you back to the warm, and then we'll come back afterwards, and we'll sort this out for you. Carrybridge lifeboat, Carrybridge lifeboat, from Carrybridge mobile, over.
Chris and Allard radio the lifeboat to meet them on the sheltered side of the island, then lead the 3 fishermen towards the rendezvous point.
It's very bumpy up here, so just watch your feet. One gentleman would have been maybe in his late 40s, the other gentlemen were slightly older that there, so we did take our time and had a leisurely walk across. There's the boat there. We left the fishermen on dry land while myself and Allard waded out into the lake just to make sure there was no submerged rocks. Not too bad here either. And we got our lifeboat in as close as we could to the shore. Still on the bottom. It's kind of a rocky. Just don't pull her any more, the back of the boat round. You don't like anybody getting wet, and the wind was biting that day. When you get wet and the wind's blowing on your skin or any wet clothes, you deteriorate. You have a chance of hypothermia setting in.
With the shoreline too rocky to bring the lifeboat any closer, the fishermen are facing a knee-deep wade through icy cold water to reach it. But then Chris, still improvising this unfamiliar land-based rescue, has an idea.
Right, force stretcher right there. Just at the last minute I thought, well, if I get the stretcher out and put it in the water and turn it upside down, at least that's saving them a foot of water, that they don't have to get wet, you know, that it'll just be their ankles and feet. Right, if you just want to walk on that, just hold on to the 2 of it. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Just put a foot on that there. We brought each fisherman across the bridge and onto the lifeboat. So we done it slowly, sure they got across safely. Okay.
Come on, here, just stay out to your side a little bit.
We got the casualties on board, we recovered the stretcher, we then give them life jackets to put on, just because we were taking them out into a bit of choppy water.
You're not too cold. You're not too cold.
No, not cold.
We proceeded then to head back, just at slow pace because of the weather conditions and that there.
The lifeboat takes the fishermen back to Knockninny.
Not a problem.
Then goes back to try and restart their boat.
Another hike back through the island again, which I thought the hiking was over for the day.
Before bringing it safely back to harbour, with all the fishing gear still on board.
It's a shout to remember every time you sail by the island. You say, I remember the day I hiked across that island. Remember the 3 fishermen we took off it.
Land, water, they don't make, you know, you just take whatever you get. Land, at least you get to stretch your legs a bit.
Yeah, the casualties were very lucky. They had no injuries, they weren't in the cold for too long.
If they hadn't had mobiles with them to raise the alarm, cold would have set in, darkness would have set in very quickly that evening, and yeah, possibly hypothermia would have set in, which can result, you know, in fatalities, you know, death. So yeah, definitely a well done job.
In Newquay, after getting stranded by the weather, Ben wasted no time hitting the surf again.
I was back in the sea the next day. Yeah, didn't stop me from getting back in and doing what I love. It hasn't affected me negatively. I think if anything, I took a positive lesson from it and just learned to be more cautious when getting in the water. It's definitely made me more aware of the dangers of the sea and how helpless you can feel even if you're a good swimmer and an experienced surfer.
And after abandoning their sinking boat off Burnham, Damien and Doug are starting to come to terms with their ordeal.
So it's been, I think, about 5 or 6 weeks since it happened. I still have feelings of sort of sadness that it happened because it was a great boat. It's one of those things and it's gone and it's not something I'm going to dwell on. No one will get injured. What else can you do? There's no point in getting upset about it because it's not going to change anything. Those few years of owning a boat, they had some great upsides, they had some huge downsides. It definitely wasn't for me.
I think we've seen the last of Damo's boating days. Yeah. He definitely won't cut out to be a skipper.
Not an experience I want to repeat anytime soon, thank you very much.
Yeah. No more boating for Damo.
Just one of you, come on!
If we're going to do this, we're only going in there once. He was only 3 metres offshore. What's the best way to get that casualty out of danger?
I had a feeling of dread. We're not going to be able to find this guy.
It's an experience I'll never ever forget. Never in my life have I felt it out, mate.